afternoon, good evening. I am your alcoholic host, Raymond W. And today I have a very special guest. All my guests are very special here on this show. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, it's nice to meet you, Raymond. My name is Jonathan Niziol. I am originally from Canada, born and raised, but I'm coming to you from Texas, Fort Worth, Texas. I've lived here for the last almost 5 years. April will be 5 years. But yeah, that's the brief introduction.
Well, welcome to the show. I haven't formally talked to you, and I've know very little about you, man. Most of my guests I know from interacting through my recovery or through someone else, and a little background. Besides you being from Canada, that's all I've got, man. And so, um, do you identify as an alcoholic, person in recovery,
Oh
addict?
yeah, I'm a recovering alcoholic. 16 years since I touched alcohol. Um, Recovering drug addict as well. It's about 7+ years since I touched any of that stuff. But yeah, I definitely um, would classify myself as an addict. I've got that addictive personality, that genetic predisposition, and then a few things happen in my life where I just, like a lot of us, turn to my substances and the distractions that came along with it. So, but yeah, it took me a long time to understand that I was an alcoholic and to classify myself as that, and to realize that, that's not something to be ashamed of, something to be proud of, especially if you're in recovery or if you're not. I mean, accepting is the first step, right?
Yeah, that's very hard. I had a good reminder of that the other day. Actually, was in a meeting and someone goes, they're in the healthcare field and said they're sitting there doubting themselves because of their profession, and I'm just like, ooh, that hits hard. And other people I know, ooh, that hit hard. And it's just like it's a good reminder. So, but
Yep.
yeah, and keeps me from questioning myself if I am or not anymore as time goes by. But that's my little dirty thoughts in my head that
Yeah.
I keep in check anymore. So you have
How do you classify yourself? Sorry, just to get to know each other. Like, were you an alcoholic? Were you drug? Like, what's a bit of your story so we can just learn each other?
Oh yeah, I identify as an alcoholic, but the more I do this, I feel like I am an addict. Fortunately enough, I wasn't like a hardcore drug addict, but I feel like I get addicted to pretty much anything.
Yeah, right.
That's the one thing
Yeah,
I've noticed. It's a predisposition to addiction, and but yeah, I'm 775 days sober. But
wow.
alcohol was my choice. But yeah, it's like sweets and it's just like everything. It's like,
Yeah,
but I have a better understanding on how to control it. And I'm like going on 2 weeks sugar free and carb free right now. So I'm
nice.
getting a grasp on this again. So I set my goals
Yeah,
and
I
work
did
on one
one of my
thing at
first
a time.
podcasts. The host said something that really stuck with me, and it's like, we as alcoholics going forward, we do things alcoholically. Whether it's eating sweets or whatever it is, we do it alcoholically, like, or fitness or whatever, like, whatever our thing is, we just take it to the nth degree, and we can find ourselves like that quickly, addicted to, but we do things alcoholically. And I thought that was a very spot on way of describing that.
That's a very good way. That's a good way to put that.
Yeah,
My
right.
issue is I'll get focused on a thing, and it's like, what's the flavor of the month? Then I'll get focused on something else. Then I'll get burnt out
Yeah,
on it. Then find the next thing. But the thing is, I go into it alcoholically, and it's just like let's work on controlling this and these impulsive thoughts when you're getting into this, because you still have to balance everything else out and not just have your mindset on the one thing. And that's what I'm working on, this year. A lot of the other stuff was like behavioral and working on irritations with other people and dealing with other people in the general public. And I've been doing that for years, but not letting it affect me or my day or anything like that.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah. 16 years, 7 years. That's a good combination, man.
It is. I mean, I guess I'll tell you where it all started. So I always partied in college. I think, high school, college. I think most of us did, and I noticed I was always like one of the ones who wanted to. I didn't want the party to end. I was finding any reason to like start the party, like, hey, it's Tuesday, we have a late start tomorrow, let's get a keg or whatever. But I was able to keep things in check for the most part. Like, I remember coming home from college one summer and just deciding for 3 months that I wasn't going to drink and just cut it out like that. But it wasn't until the day before my 21st birthday that my mom passed away very suddenly, very unexpectedly. And that just completely rocked my world. And that's when things went off the rails. I started dealing with a lot of mental health issues, severe anxiety, clinical depression, and panic disorder, self-harm, those kinds of things. And alcohol was slowly creeping up as a coping mechanism, as the self-medicating. And it finally got to the point where, I was a non-functioning alcoholic. I was just, I was getting the shakes. I was skipping work to drink. I was, waking up to drink, gained a bunch of weight, just, everything in my life.
Hold on, you cut out, man. And the red button's back on.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I mean, I was seeing things happen around me, like gaining weight, and I prided myself on being a very reliable person. If I say I'm going to do something, I show up, and I'm there for my friends, or especially work and stuff like that. And I saw those things starting to dissipate, and I wanted to believe that it was everything else around me as opposed to alcohol, because you never want to let go of that crutch, right? Like it's so obviously like right in front of you, like what the problem is, but it's the last thing you want to do. And I remember the day that I finally realized and came to terms with the fact that this had gotten a hold of me, and I was an alcoholic. I was skipping work. It was 8:00 in the morning. I'm cracking my first beer. I've got the shakes. And I just sat there and I was like, that's it. Like, I'm an alcoholic. And I knew I needed to stop, but I didn't know how I was going to stop. And I spent about 3 years that way, but I got very lucky because I had a very bad case of acute pancreatitis. And I spent just under a month in the hospital. I had to have 5 blood transfusions, and I lost 40 pounds in the first 2 weeks and 60 pounds in total, and almost died twice while I was in there. And I needed it to be that severe for me to stop. And that's why, like, for people like yourself who choose recovery, I have so much respect for, and so much that's absolutely incredible, because I didn't have the strength to do that. I needed it to come to like a near-death experience. And a lot of us have had dozens of rock bottoms and, maybe near-death experiences. But yeah, for me, that's what it was. I came out of that with, no desire to touch alcohol ever again, because of knowing that what I had just experienced. I was 25 at the time, and, you're 25, you think you're invincible. And I remember laying there in the hospital bed, and it just being quiet in the ward at night, and laying there by myself and being like, man, I can't do this. Like, I can't be in this situation again. And I just came out of it with like okay, well, alcohol is not a part of my life. But I needed that severity. Like, I grew up in the era, and I'm sure you did too. Like, where our parents spanked us. And, it wasn't like, for me at least, it wasn't like my dad had a bad day and he wanted to come home and take it out on me. It's just like I needed something like to really, like, if you put me in timeout, I would just be thinking about like hockey sticks and tennis balls. Like I wouldn't like, put two and two together. I need something severe, like just to snap me out of it. And that was like an adult, like spanking where it was like, okay, like wake up, like, wake up call. And with that, I came out of the hospital and I really gained a better appreciation for these incredible bodies that we're given, with like the way that they work and how precious they are. And the fact that if you are good to them, how much they'll be good to you and how much abuse they can take too, for years. And like, like we've done years of just pounding on our bodies. And like, they probably should have said like, enough is enough. Like we can't take this anymore, but they still find a way to keep going and keep pushing. So I started my passion for fitness then, and I've been a certified personal trainer for the last 13 years. And fitness is something that I'm very passionate about. And still I'm always trying to learn more about the body. But I, soon after, I think it was about actually a year after I came out of the hospital, I got into better shape, got back into good shape. I was playing professional lacrosse and I had a career-ending knee injury. But I thought, okay, when one door closes, another door opens. And I looked into doing some modeling because my mom was a professional model in the late 70s and early 80s. And I started to travel with modeling and stuff like that. And it was great. It was wonderful. I had like lots of opportunities to see wonderful places and, go to some pretty incredible places and live with live with and meet a lot of really cool and very down to earth and some pretty douchey people as well. But that's just life, in any aspect. But I was in Miami and I was only 26 at the time. And I went to a casting, and keep in mind at the time I'm like 220 pounds, still working out like a professional athlete. Indoor lacrosse is a very physical sport. So I've been like, I used to fight a lot in lacrosse and I've been in a lot of altercations, with my drinking and misplaced anger and all that kind of stuff. But the point of that is I got to Miami and I went to a casting, and long story short, I was sexually assaulted on that casting by this guy and this designer who I was going to the casting for. And in the moment, I'm like, my first response is, okay, I'm going to beat the life out of this guy. My second thought was, I'm going to go to jail for attempted murder or murder. And then my third was, I'm just going to get out of here. I've got to go, like, remove myself from the situation. But I'd already started like planting the seeds of body dysmorphia because of like seeing other models around me, and I was doing well and where I was traveling, I was getting a lot of bookings, but I was still comparing myself a lot to other people. And I thought, maybe I need to change my body. And with this thing that happened in Miami, like we said, doing things alcoholically, like 2 weeks after that, I started like an 8-year battle with an eating disorder where I always say that I was a functioning bulimic, where I would wake up, I'd eat like my healthy breakfast, lunch, dinner, everything like that. And then when I got back to it was always when I was, alone. All of my addictions have been very much like when I was alone with myself. I wasn't much of a partier. I wasn't like, hey, let's come over and do that. Like, what I mean? Like it was always I was very insular. I was very, just, I'm going to retreat from the world. And once I got back to my house and I was surrounded by these four walls, my anxiety started to build. And that's where all my thoughts and everything from my mom dying, all that stuff started to like really peak. So that's what I would, go and get like $150 worth of junk food, just eat it and then, purge it. And, that kind of cycle where I just would use that as an escape. And I did that for a while. And then I got back into weed, and again, with how we do things, it wasn't like, oh, I'll just smoke like a joint, like here and there. It was like, I'm going to smoke 2 ounces a week by myself. Like I'm going to go, I'll go crazy with it. And that was the same thing with Adderall. I got into Adderall. I was like, oh, I'm doing things that are productive, but I'm staying up for 4 or 5 days at a time. And, this is not productive. And I always felt like I was hitting the reset button after these binges, because when I would come out the other end of a binge, say it was like a 4 or 5 day binge, it took another 2 days to like get everything out of my system. And then to go back to the gym, I felt like I wasn't even starting from like where I was. I was starting from a little farther back, because, it was that constant reset where I was putting myself back a little bit. And then it was the same thing with nitrous, with whippets. It was something that we just did in college that was fun. And, it was a great distraction. And the final straw for me, and I'll give myself credit, because I always kept with, Adderall is pretty aggressive, but I always kept with like the baseline drugs. Like I knew that the moment that I put a hydro something or oxy something in my body, or Coke or anything like that, my life would be over. Like I went through my ecstasy phase when I was in college, tried Coke a couple times, but when I was within that mindset, I knew if I put anything into my body like that, I'll be under the bridge, like under a bridge, homeless or dead. So I stuck with the baseline drugs, but I did them to excess. And the last one was these muscle relaxers that you could buy just off the shelves, and they had in each one they had 500 milligrams of the active muscle relaxer, which is called methocarbamol, and 200 milligrams of ibuprofen. And I was taking 100 pills every single day without question. Like I was taking 50,000 milligrams of methocarbamol and 20,000 milligrams of ibuprofen every single day. I would just come home from work, dump in like a bottle, dump 30 in there, just swallow them down. Same thing every day, 100 pills. And I started to notice that I didn't have energy. I was very lethargic. I was getting really lightheaded. I was having fainting spells. And I finally put 2 and 2 together, and my anxiety was through the roof, because I thought, what if I have a fainting spell while I'm driving and I hurt somebody? And I finally realized that it was these pills, and I had a major ulcer, major internal bleeding from an intestinal ulcer because of it. And that was my aha moment, where I was like, okay, I'm 35 years old, and this plan or whatever I've been doing, it hasn't been working. And I need to try something different. And for me, that was going to therapy. And it got a lot darker before it got better. Like that's when all of these nicely placed compartmentalized boxes of trauma that just started to open up, and I didn't have any substance or distraction to like cope with them. But I battled through it, and I just said, this is not going to beat me. As much as like I wanted to choose the take the easy way out and just quit many times, I kept fighting through, and here I am 7 years later. And only within the last year, I've become comfortable enough to start talking about what I've been through. And I think that it's an important thing too. And I'm proud of what I've been through, and it defines who I am, but not in a negative way. Like I've learned to practice forgiveness with myself. And this is just something that I've done within 2023. The things that I did while I was trying to cope with my mom's death and the sexual assault, and I lost 3 best friends in that period as well. One to suicide, and one to a car accident, one to undiagnosed heart condition. But the things that I did to try and deal with those, okay, they might not have been the best choices, but I was trying. And I forgive myself for that. We can't go back and we can't change it, but the things that have happened to me that are out of my control, like my mom dying and the sexual assault and stuff like that, I forgive myself for those things too, because those weren't things that I chose, but they've happened, and I wouldn't be the person that I am today without them. So that's kind of where I'm at now. That's kind of like what I've been through, and that's basically my story and where I find myself today.
Well, I mean, that's hard. It's hard to forgive ourselves. And so this is, you pretty much went to the hospital. You were given that, you were into that point to where that was your first gift of desperation to get away from alcohol.
Yep.
And you just didn't look back, just kept going. I'm not going to drink, move on. That was your program for that.
There's a caveat to that actually. So I went to the hospital the first time. It was the day before Canadian Thanksgiving, and I started getting a real bad pain in my gut. And I drove myself to the ER, and they told me it was pancreatitis from drinking. And after 3 days in the hospital, I checked myself out of the hospital to go home because I had a fridge full of beer, and I wasn't ready to let go of it. And I cracked the beer, took a sip, the pain came back right away. And I spent 3 days at home. I couldn't lay down. I couldn't sit up. My liver was jaundiced. My stomach was distended. And then my dad rushed me to a clinic in Toronto. And that's where they rushed me into the hospital. And so it wasn't just it wasn't just the first time. I mean, I wasn't ready to let go of it. I was not ready. I went back. Like I said, I didn't tell my dad until probably 2 or 3 years ago that I checked myself out of the hospital that first time. He thought that they just released me, but I checked myself out of the hospital because I'm an adult. I was an adult, and I went home to drink. But after going back into it and then going through the blood transfusions and, losing all the weight and the catheter and the tubes up the nose and the, PICC line with all that, then I got to the point where the pancreas specialist who was working with me came to me, and he was a younger guy. He's like, look, man, he's like, the severity of pancreatitis that you've had, it's what we see in like a 70-year-old who's been drinking for, 50 years. We don't know why you got it. We don't know why you got it so bad, but just know that you can't, like, we don't know if you could have a beer or you'd be fine. We don't know if you could have two, like, we don't know. And after going through that, I was like, hey, I don't want to go near this stuff ever again. And that was where I didn't look back at alcohol. But going further down the line, I started to look at other things because I had those things that I wasn't dealing with.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just, I always just try to see if there's like a maintenance phase with that, but you keep that in the back of your mind. It's there. That's enough for you. It's enough for you. And, because my thing is analyzing and thinking about this, because everyone's recovery is different, whether it's in a program or not. You can quit using and drinking and all that with if you want to. And that's kind of like my thing. I'm the whole thing about this. You were desperate enough, and you knew you didn't quit. You're gonna die from like pancreas blowing up inside you or whatever pancreas does. My dad's in the hospital with pancreatitis right now, and it's
really,
and it's not from drinking, but they keep asking him if he drinks, and he's like, no. But he keeps
like my son did. My son drank enough for both of us.
That's right. That's probably what it is. He got it from osmosis or something.
I don't know. My dad says. My dad wasn't a drinker either, and I drank enough for the both of us.
Yeah, but that's why I'm just trying to. I like stories of this, like this is it. You kept moving, you move forward, but down the road you ran into your next obstacles, and you went through a myriad of. I like how you say you set rigid rules with like the baseline drugs. It's like how we set, like alcoholics set rigid rules about originally having rigid rules about drinking. starting off as a weekend warrior or stuff like that, and then
Yep.
the scales tipping from it. Oh, it started out as fun, then it was fun, then proms started coming in, and then the proms outweigh the fun and stuff like that. And it's just like, but we all set those baselines and stuff like that. And I'm glad you brought that up. And you're just like, because, I've talked to other people like that. And I think about that myself because I would afraid from what I did when I was younger. I probably wouldn't have made it to where, man, that could be a whole different outcome. And that's a good reminder. And it's a thing for me to be grateful for that I didn't let myself get hung up in that. And I used somewhat sense back then because I didn't have a lick of damn sense when I was in my 20s. I'll tell you that much.
No.
And
And I knew like once I got to that point with the muscle relaxers, I knew that either I graduated to the next level of drugs and like I said, my life would be over, or I did something drastic and went and took this time and went to therapy. Because throughout my 20s, therapy's for wimps, therapy's for losers. I'm not going to sit there and have somebody judge me. I had all these things in my mind. I don't have the time. I had time for all the drugs. I don't have the money. I had money for all the drugs. All these things that I had these like stigmas toward therapy. And like I said, I either was like, I got to that point and I graduated to the next level because I had kind of run out of like the baselines and having done that before with alcohol. And like you said, setting those baselines and watching those quickly disappear into into your past. And it was something, it was time to do something different and to, get smart about it. But I'd just be thankful that I made it through my 20s because, like you said, didn't have a lick of sense going through our 20s and yikes. But thankfully.
yeah, because I find it funny. It's like, legal drinking age is 21. And there's 20-year-olds that do get their shit together. And then there's people like me, people like you, people like other people I know and people I ran with. And there's people I ran with that still ain't changed, and it's just like I feel sorry for them, but I mean that's their choice. But
yeah, no, I agree, and I've it's just like when I stopped playing lacrosse, like I lost touch with a lot of my lacrosse friends because we didn't have that in common anymore. Like when I stopped drinking, I lost touch with a lot of my drinking buddies, not because I thought I was better than them or anything like that. We just didn't have that common interest anymore. And they're great people and I wish them well and all that kind of stuff. And I've slowly seen a number of them start to realize that it's an issue and become sober. But for those who haven't, again, I think they're great people and I wish them all the best and we just don't have that in common anymore. So and not to mention I've moved countries as well, but you know what I'm saying? Like we lose that common interest.
yeah, I've brought that up several times on the show. And when I speak with others about like my recovery and my past and stuff like that, the common interests and group of friends. I hang out with alcoholics and addicts now more than anything. It's like it's like the best people you can hang out with nowadays for me. And they're like, what? Well, they're in recovery, so yeah, we're there for each other. But I've reached out to a couple people within this past couple weeks, and I'm glad I did. And and it was just like there's no falling out or anything like that, but it was just.
Yeah.
But that's another thing I work on. I think of someone, I try to get in touch with them, try to. There's I don't know why I think about them, but maybe there's something that needs to be talked about or something like that. So that's the other thing I've been working on this because I just figure I find other things to work on as I go. But I want to get back to you. You're the guest today. So your second gift there, your second gift, I love calling it the gift of desperation because that's when we stop, and that's where we become willing. When are we desperate enough and just stop?
Yep. Agreed.
and understand that it's this is it. I mean, with you just like over the counter, you're not the first person I've talked to that was abusing over the counter stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm listening to this, and I'm like, man, you're lucky you just got the ulcers because that could have as much as you doing. I'm surprised you weren't like I don't know. I'm not a my wife's a healthcare professional. I need to start having her on here, but she'd steal the show. One, she's too pretty, and two, she's too damn smart. Um, but
Yeah, I've been
yeah,
told by a number of people who are in healthcare that it's lucky that I made it through that with the numbers that I was putting up and the amount that I was ingesting and stuff like that. And yeah, it's just, I know that like, and then maybe this is probably the case for you as well. We talk about rock bottoms, and a lot of people who don't understand or haven't been through addiction or alcoholism or whatever it is, a lot of them picture it as you hit rock bottom. But I'm guessing like myself, I've had dozens of rock bottoms, and the rock bottoms that I've gone through were much worse than the one that actually got me to finally stop. You know what I mean? Like I've hit way lower lows than than when I finally said, okay, enough is enough, and to get through those kinds of things. And I think that's an important thing to notice and to make mention of, because if somebody's listening to this and they're trying to help somebody and they just don't get it, it's like, don't you see what's happening? It's like, yeah, I mean, it's part of the process, and everybody, like you said, everybody's recovery looks different, and there are going to be rock bottoms along the way where it's like, well, isn't this enough? And a lot of times, no, it's not enough. We just keep going through those things. And I went to an AA meeting about 9 years after I quit drinking. So I was smoking weed heavily and doing all the other stuff, but on the surface, everything looked like it was fine. And a friend of mine, actually, she had a sugar addiction. She took me to a big meeting, and like what you said about hanging out with addicts and alcoholics and stuff and being the best people that you could hang out with, I was so shocked and in a great way with the community, and how it was a hall of probably 200 people, and they were just there to support one another. And gender, race, tax bracket, none of these things mattered. They were just all there because they had the same affliction. There was family there supporting somebody. The person who got their 10-year chip got, the person who got their I want to stop drinking today got just as much of an applause as the person who got their 10-year chip. And I was like, man, this gives me faith in society. Like, this is incredible. Like this is incredible to see where, people are coming together and people are supporting one another simply because they've all been bitten by this, dragon or this affliction or whatever you want to call it. And it was truly remarkable. It was very life-changing for me. It was a very powerful thing to go through and to see for myself.
yeah. I never wanted to get an AA, and I thought I was going to be done with it. With because that's part of my story was a lot, and it's been brought up on this show several times. It was like, I quit drinking on my own, but my wife knew me well enough that I wasn't going to stay that path unless I did something else. And it was just, I had to change my behaviors. Up until about 3 years ago, oh man, I guess I was a douche, an asshole, whatever you want to call it, man. It's,
oh yeah.
I had 18 years of law enforcement prior to all that, and it was, I carried a pretty big chip on my shoulder, and I had to be humbled down quite a bit,
Mm-hmm.
That's why I do the AA. I go to AA. It's not as much as a lot of other people would like me to go, but I'm not drinking. I'm taking my own personal inventory and making amends when I fuck up and try to do better the next day, because that's what it boils down to, and that's what triggered me, and not take offense to other people, being offended by other people. And it's hard, especially living in the type of society we live in now.
For sure. Yeah,
It's
it's very true.
and it's just like, I pay no mind to it, but then I go to a lot of secular AA, because that's where I met my sponsor, and
Mm-hmm.
uh that's just what keeps me going. And but I outweigh the both and look at both AAs, and it's just like, why don't you guys just call it AA? What's it matter? You guys remove
Mm-hmm.
all the other bullshit that the one's saying and what the other's saying. It's all the same shit. You guys just focus on your bullshit and rinse and repeat. You got this.
Yeah.
You'd be Gucci as a flip flop. I mean, that's just my personal observation right now. And
Right.
but this is what I consider my service commitment, and this is I've had some deep conversations outside of here, but this has also brought people into recovery, and it was just like I never expected to find out, and I did find out, and this is what I consider my service work. This is me paying back to other people being there for me, and I'm glad you're really here, man, because I know your story so well, and I don't know you.
Yeah.
And
Same.
yeah.
Yeah. Same.
So, what do you call your program?
That's a good question. I don't really have a label for it, to be honest.
Yeah, I was
just
trying to
when
cook
people
one up
ask
for you.
Yeah, when people ask, I just say that I'm, and I found, like we talked about earlier, like you mentioned earlier, is that balance, right? And finding balance is what my biggest program is. And like when I quit taking Adderall, I started drinking a ton of caffeine, and I was drinking like 8 monsters a day, pre-workout, coffee. I was drinking like 3,500 milligrams of caffeine a day. And, it's that alcoholically, it's that mindset of that. So I cut out caffeine like around the same time, like 7 years ago. And I know that I don't, as much as I've spent so much time altering my state of consciousness and, like looking for my drug of choice or whatever it is to alter my state of consciousness, I really now love being level-headed, clear-headed, and not fucking that up. Like really, I really enjoy that. And yeah, I know that I don't put myself in situations where I don't have a desire. Like one of my biggest fears is ingesting alcohol, because I don't know how my body will react, if it will just shut down right away. I have a bottle of Dom Perignon that's in my thing. That's just a souvenir from a ski trip, 15 years ago. But I don't obviously keep alcohol in the house and stuff like that. I can be around people who drink. That's no problem. I don't put myself in situations where people are smoking weed and stuff like that, because I'm afraid that, like, if I catch a secondhand buzz or high or something, my brain will be like, oh, that felt pretty good. And then it's off to the races. Then I'll just pick up to where I left off. I'll just go right back into where I started. But yeah, to put a name on what I do, I don't really have. I'm just trying to, like I said, just like you said, just take it one day at a time and trying to learn and keep growing and trying to give back to the community, and then trying to get back to myself and forgive myself and to grow myself. So I can just keep going forward and be the best version of myself for me and for the people I care for around me and for society. I want to just, do that and focus on that.
Man, you hit some really good points right there. The whole weed thing is like, especially like
Man,
me living in a legal state like Ohio. I'm in Ohio. They just passed all the recreational, and I'm like looking on social media and people talking, and I'm like, who cares? If you're already doing it, you're already doing it. So what's it matter if it's legal or it's not? But I know a lot of people, and it's I don't have anything against it. I don't have anything against anyone using, but it's like you said, is my body gonna shut down if I drink another drink? Probably not. But this is what's gonna happen. You're gonna drink, and all you're gonna do is reset because it's not just a drink. It's not. I know it was never just one drink or two drinks or whatever, and that's like when I get that little tappy tap on my shoulder, or that little imaginary whisper in my ear that it's okay, or I can do it, or you can taste it. It's I really can't. I look back to the first time I drank unsupervised, if you know what I mean. Like, and that was a horrific event back then. And it's like, why didn't I stop then? And,
right.
But I couldn't stop because it's a sickness or an allergy or whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's
disease, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I mean, but it's just I don't know, because I can apply this to so much other things like you apply it to, but I just rather say I'm an alcoholic because it's just easier to talk about that, because that's the one that's killing and people suffering and all that stuff, and man, you're a good dude, man. So,
thank you, man. I appreciate it. So are you.
Yeah. So you were in, what was it, Playgirl magazine or something?
No, not quite. I've kept all of my modeling above board.
Okay. I'm sorry. That was totally misconstrued. I must have been reading something else.
Yeah. No, I've kept all that above board. I've done New York Fashion Week and Men's Health and Hugo Boss and a number of big clients, but always fully covered. I mean, underwear stuff, obviously, that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's been quite an experience for sure, and I still model to this day. And that's the thing. So you mentioned like with Ohio, and then they passed in the laws like Canada, weed is completely legal now. And when I was in my weed smoking days, like I was meeting guys in parking lots, hiding it in like compartments in my Jeep, like all that kind of stuff. And now you go there and people are just walking down the street smoking joints. And like you go downtown Toronto and every third store is a weed store. I'm like, where was this when I was smoking? Like, man, like I had to like put myself in dangerous situations with dangerous people to get my drug. But that's the thing. Like, yeah, it's absolutely right, because that's how we work. And like you said, it's not just one. And I had to be very conscious of that. Like, oh, that felt good. Like even with fitness and even with, things like that. Whereas, 2 years ago, I play hockey. I love playing hockey. I'm from Canada. It's what we do. So I go to the gym 6 days a week and lift. I play on 4 different hockey teams, 4 nights a week. And then I was running 6 miles every day. And I was doing that for a couple of years. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. That's the addictive part of Jonathan, where that's too much, going to the gym 6 days a week, playing hockey 4 days a week. for my health, for my knees, for all that kind of stuff, I need to cut the 6 miles a day because I'm burning the candle at both ends, and I'm doing that in that addictive way. So even with things that are positive, you can, everything in moderation, including moderation, right?
Right, but that just reminded me you were talking about the body dysmorphia earlier too, and and all that other stuff. How'd you get past that?
A lot of personal growth, to be honest, and as I got more clear-headed about clear-headed by getting rid of my substances and stuff like that, and going through therapy and stuff, I came to realize, and I think this is just important for everybody, especially like you said, in today's society where, kids open their phones and there's Kim Kardashian and whoever, and they're comparing themselves to whomever. For me, it was like I was comparing myself to other people in the industry, and it was like, maybe I should be more like this person to get more jobs. Well, there's already that person, and I'm unique. And if I'm the best version of myself for myself, I've found that I get the most work and I feel the best about myself, and I'm being true to myself. And, I with modeling, you have to stay with, you can't get too big, and I don't want to be a bodybuilder. I've done the thing where I've just gotten, but I find I'm just very like just being the best version of myself. And that's where the most work has come, and the most, the best, I don't know, view of myself has really come when I'm looking at me as the best version of me and not comparing myself to anybody else. So that was a big, long learning process. Long learning process. Because if you go to a modeling casting and you don't get it, you say, what is wrong with me? Why didn't they pick me? There's something wrong with me. And it's a hard thing to do. And, I've been modeling for 15 years, and it's a shame now because kids and adults and, everybody's doing that nowadays with social media and stuff. But especially when, your livelihood's on the line, and like I said, you go to a casting, you don't get it. It's like, well, what's wrong with me? And there's nothing wrong with you. You have to realize that even the top 5% of models are not booking 75% of the castings that they go to. But it's a hard thing to learn about that. So you put all these things in your head, but yeah, that's what helped me finally get past it.
But that's with everything that we apply ourselves to in life.
Yes.
That's our mentality. Our mentality. I'd interview for promotions, and someone else would get it, and it's like, but my numbers is better than this person's numbers, and all the rationalizing and de-rationalizing. That's why I like doing this, because it's just like I could start seeing other things add up and similarities of what we do. It's like, I would have never thought models would have thought that. I thought you'd think like, shit, I can't think of what I wanted to use to say that now. But I'd never think of that. And the body dysmorphia, I've heard about it, but never all that stuff. But it's like, but people that use and drink, I see it's just like tick, 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 ding. This lines up. This lines up. This lines up. How do we take a hold of it? How do we handle it? Personal growth, development, and whichever program. So now with the modeling, are you doing like a motivational speaking or something like that? Or
I'm starting to get towards that place. It's only been within 2023 that I've started to talk about the stuff publicly and doing podcasts and, having articles and written and stuff like that. So yeah, it is something that I'm going to start doing, and something I'm very interested in doing, because I've come to realize that vulnerability is power. And whereas, the first time I posted something on my Instagram talking about, my shames and my secrets that I've been carrying around for the longest time, I I went to the gym the next day and my anxiety was through the roof because I was like, everybody's looking at me. They know my secrets. They know, they know. And same thing going to hockey, walking into the dressing room. But I was like, wait a minute, I'm the same person that walked in there yesterday. I'm the same person. And, the more I talk about this and the more I am vulnerable about this and, have people come up to me and like you said, learning from people, like having wonderful conversations, like with people like yourself and learning from what you're saying. It's like, this is an important thing. So yeah, I'm going to start doing some speaking. I'm going to be starting a podcast in the next 6 months myself, and I will definitely be having you on as a guest. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, I think it's a very important thing to do, and I want to continue to do that. And with modeling, my goal is to be. I love modeling. I really enjoy the industry. I've met a lot of great people. I want to be booked for who I am and not just what I look like, because we are looked at as inanimate objects. Do you fit the profile we need? Body type, skin color, whatever. You are an inanimate object. I want to be booked for Jonathan Niziol. I want to be booked for the guy who's been through all this stuff. And he's not too bad to look at, but he's taking, good care of himself. But he comes with this story and he comes with all this stuff. And we want to get our brand behind that for the, so that's the direction I want to take that. But yes, absolutely motivational speaking and continuing on and just kind of rolling with it.
You don't want to be treated like a meat sickle anymore.
No, exactly. And it's very much like that. It's very much like that.
No, I like it. I like your message. I got to be apprehensive. I got to be apprehensive doing this show, and who I bring onto the show. Okay, it's we got in contact because a third party got us in contact to each other, and I had to research before I go. Okay, just to see what agenda, or not exactly like an agenda, but what are they trying to sell? And I could genuinely see you weren't like trying to sell like a product or something like that, because I get emails all the time, and some people would be like, "Oh, this person's done this," but here's their product, and I look at the product and it's got stuff that's addictive in it and mind altering in it, and I'm like, no, absolutely not. I mean, I believe in harm reduction and stuff like that, but I can't stand by that, and I can't promote that, because it's gonna put that voice in here, Ray, here, try it. No.
Yeah.
I gotta be smart about what I do, because I know better than that now, but it's just like, you're genuine, and it's got to be hard to wrap around saying, I want to be the model recognized for who I am. And that's powerful, man. That's powerful. Yeah, that's,
thank you.
Yeah. Cause I was getting ready to ask another question about something. It's just like my new thing is like, have you done something for someone else and not tell them? That's kind of what I like to do. But I don't get known for, but it's like, I want to be the model that it's because of me and my story of strength, hope. And
I think I appreciate that. And I think, a big thing that, you are doing and I think we are doing in having these conversations is, we won't see, this could reach somebody, and this will reach people, and this will connect with people and help people, and we will never see it. And we will never, you get a lot of emails and stuff like that, and we'll never see that necessarily. And with regards to selling something is, no, I genuinely believe in society and want to help make the world a better place. And like with your mindset as well, and I can tell you're a very genuine guy in the way that you approach this and stuff like that. Like you said, I've had a lot of I get a lot of emails and stuff too where they're like, hey, why don't you try this CBD stuff? And I'm like, why don't you go fuck yourself? Because I'm like, I can't get on board with that for whatever. I have to line up with my morals. And like I said, I genuinely want to just help make the world a better place and help people who are struggling. And I don't think, the sun shines out of my ass and all that kind of stuff. And
that's what I was looking for. That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah. Nah, man, not at all. I mean, I'm just trying to figure it out one day at a time as much as anybody. And I'm so open to growth, and I love these conversations. I love when people reach out and stuff, because I'm going to take things away from this conversation with you that I'm going to put in my tool chest to help go forward and help protect and really cherish my sobriety and things that I've learned from you. And when people reach out and tell me stuff about their stuff, and I really love that. And yeah, I don't think, I got it all figured. Forget that, man, dude. And I have, the hardest days, just like everybody else, just like everybody else. But, we're all human. There's never been a perfect human that's walked this earth, and there never will be. And the more we can understand, like we said, if you asked us in our 20s, we had it all figured out. You needed the answer. Like, I'm sure we had it. But as you get older, it's like we realize, Jesus, I don't know shit. And just being open to learning and growing and, doing that, and standing by our failures. They've made us who we are, and I'm pretty, you're a fantastic dude. Like, I don't know you that well, but in speaking with you and seeing the way that you talk and the passion and the genuine way in which you talk, you wouldn't be this person if you hadn't gone through what you've been through and all of the trials and tribulations, and same with me. And that's an important thing to remember, and to stand by those things and say, okay, like I said, I forgive myself for going down that route for however many years, because I'm here today and I'm this person. And that's what I had to go that way to get this way. So I think it's an important thing to keep in mind, because we beat ourselves up so much as addicts and alcoholics. We just beat ourselves down. I spent years wishing I had those hundreds of thousands of dollars back, and all that time that I'd spent on alcohol and drugs, and but we can't put the world back to the way it was 5 seconds ago. That's gone. And I chalk it up to, you go to college, you pay tuition, and you come out with an education. We went through a different path, and we put a lot of time and money towards that, and we got life lessons and a sort of education to become who we are. And I'm like, okay, that's money. That's gone. Okay, great. Now I have all that to come with me now, and I can be who I am and look at it that way and not pine over. But man, so much money, so much time. But hey, man, it's like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah. Man, that's a pretty good final thought, and I don't even have to ask you for the damn thing.
No, I appreciate it, man.
That's
it's
awesome.
Just, like I said, that's just the way I think it's important to keep things in check and to really remind ourselves of. And it's taken me years and like I said, I'm still just figuring out one day at a time, still just trying to learn. And like I said, this is really an important conversation, because some of the things that you've talked about and knowing what you're going through and what you've been through it's important to me. And people don't have to share their stuff. People don't have to open up and, to be vulnerable or to start a podcast like you and to give back to the community. They don't have to do that. And it's not for everybody. That's not to say that those people who are not comfortable talking about their stuff, that's not to say that they're not doing a great job or whatever. If you're at day 1 of recovery or day 700, like you said, it's not to say like that's fine, but I do think it's great that what you're doing and the platform that you're doing and what you're giving back to and making yourself vulnerable and, you know, admitting to your faults publicly and saying, yeah, I was a fuck up. I was a fuck up for a long, long time. And I was a real fucking douchebag. Like real. I think that's a very important thing to do. And I think that's a wonderful thing that you're doing, man.
It's hard to admit all that stuff, but once you get over yourself, you'd be surprised how much your world opens up to you.
Yeah,
So
it's true. Very true.
yeah. So I appreciate you coming on the show, man. Definitely let me. Do you have any social medias you want to plug or?
Yeah, I'm doing the whole social media thing on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. It's just my name, Jonathan Niziol, and I'm sure you'll put that in the show notes. It's Niziol, and then my website and my Facebook are Jonathan Niziol Official. And yeah, I love to hear from people. I love to learn from people. I love to continue the conversation, to learn and grow and to share stories and to, you know, band together. And yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful thing. So yeah, I would love to hear from people and, you know, I'll definitely keep in contact, you and I, and yeah.
Yeah, no, I ain't got a third party involved.
Yeah, exactly.
I appreciate you, man.
Thanks, man.